Sarah Mitchell, a nurse who had worked in the emergency room at Mount Sinai Hospital for 15 years, had seen thousands of patients in her lifetime. But the traffic accident patient that night was different. When she saw the tattoo on his arm, her heart stopped. Because that tattoo was supposed to be the special design on her missing brother Michael's arm for 20 years. However, the patient was in a coma and his identity was unknown. Was this really her brother, or was it an incredible coincidence? The night shift at Mount Sinai Hospital's emergency room in Manhattan, New York was quiet as usual. Sarah Mitchell had been working here for 15 years and was now used to all kinds of cases. From gunshot wounds to heart attacks, from drug overdose cases to birth emergencies, she had seen it all. The 42-year-old experienced nurse was passionate about her profession, but there was a deep wound in her life. 20 years ago, her 16-year-old little brother Michael had left their house in Queens one night and never returned. The NYPD had investigated, the family had gone to the media, and they had applied to every organization dealing with missing children cases. But Michael seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. As the years passed, the family lost hope, and even his older brother David began to say he must be living another life now. But Sarah had never given up. She looked for her brother in every unidentified patient brought to the hospital. At 2:30 that night, ambulance sirens were heard. Sarah prepared to meet the incoming patients. The patient brought in on a stretcher had been in a serious traffic accident near the Brooklyn Bridge. A man about 35 to 40 years old, with bleeding in his head, a fracture in his left leg, and bruises in his chest area. Most importantly, he was in a coma. Does he have any ID? Sarah asked the paramedics. No identification documents. The car was completely burned. It's a miracle how this man survived, said the EMT personnel. The patient was taken to the trauma room. While Dr. Rodriguez came and examined the patient, Sarah was doing her routine procedures. After the initial checks, she needed to remove the patient's clothes and put on a hospital gown. While cutting the shirt sleeve on his left arm, her eye caught a detail. On the arm, about 4 inches above the wrist, was a small but very special tattoo. Sarah's heart stopped for a moment. This couldn't be possible. The tattoo was simple but very meaningful. An eagle silhouette with SM letters underneath. Sarah and Michael's initials. The special design they had drawn together as children, which they would get tattooed when they turned 18. Sarah's hands began to tremble. This couldn't be a coincidence. Only they knew that design. They had completed the drawing just 1 week before her brother disappeared. I'll get it when I turn 18, Michael had said. You get the same one too. So we'll always remember we're siblings. But Michael had disappeared before he could see his 18th birthday. Sarah looked at the patient's face. 20 years had passed. A child's face would change. But the jaw structure, the brow ridge, seemed familiar. Sarah, are you okay? Asked Dr. Rodriguez. You look very pale. I'm fine, doctor. Let me do my routine checks. But Sarah wasn't fine. There were thousands of questions in her mind. Could this really be Michael? Then where had he been for 20 years? Why hadn't he contacted his family? Was there another explanation? She checked the patient's pockets. There were no identification documents, but there was only cash in his wallet. A lot of money, several $1,000s. This also seemed strange to Sarah, an unidentified but wealthy man. The next morning, when her shift ended, Sarah stayed at the hospital instead of going home. The patient was still in a coma. Sarah sat by his bedside, looking at the tattoo. She didn't know what to do. You're showing special interest in this patient, said her colleague Linda. Do you know him? No. I'm not sure, said Sarah. That evening, her older brother David came to the hospital. Sarah had called him and asked him to come, but hadn't given details. What's going on, Sarah? You sounded very strange on the phone. David, I'm going to show you something. But you need to stay calm. She took her brother to the patient's bedside. Look at the tattoo on this man's arm. David was surprised when he saw the tattoo. This is our design. Michael's design. Exactly. So who could this man be? David looked carefully at the patient's face. Sarah, this is ridiculous. Michael is gone. It's been 20 years. What if he didn't leave? What if he somehow stayed alive? Then why didn't he contact us for 20 years? Why didn't he send a single message until our father died? This question also made Sarah think. Their father had died of a heart attack 3 years ago. He had waited for his son until the end of his life, praying for him every day. That night, Sarah went home but couldn't sleep. She took out old photos and tried to compare Michael's 16-year-old appearance with the face in the hospital. There were similarities, but 20 years was a very long time. The next day, she decided to have a DNA test done at the hospital. She took samples from her own hair and the patient's hair. Waiting for the results was torture. On the third day, the patient opened his eyes. Sarah was beside him. "Where am I?" the patient murmured. "You're in the hospital. You had a car accident. What's your name?" The patient held his head in pain. I don't remember anything." "You don't remember your name?" "No. Everything seems blurry." "Who are you?" "I'm Sarah. I'm your nurse." "The tattoo on your arm is very interesting. What does it mean?" The patient looked at his arm. "I don't know. I guess it's always been there, but I don't remember what it represents." Sarah felt her heart beating rapidly. What if he really was her brother, but had memory loss? The DNA results came that afternoon. Sarah opened the report with trembling hands. The result was positive. 99.7% probability of being siblings. Sarah's knees gave out. She had found her brother. After 20 years, Michael was in front of her. But now there were bigger questions. Where had Michael been for 20 years? Why hadn't he returned? And if he had lost his memory now, how would she tell him? Sarah called her older brother. "David, the test results came. This is really Michael." There was silence on the phone. Then David's sobbing voice was heard. "What do you mean? Where was he for 20 years?" "I don't know. He's lost his memory. He doesn't remember anything." That evening, David came to the hospital. When he saw his brother, he burst into tears. "Michael, I'm David, your older brother." The patient looked at him, but didn't react. "I'm sorry, I don't remember you." "This is normal," said Dr. Rodriguez. "He may experience temporary memory loss as a result of head trauma. Memories may come back in time." Days passed. Sarah was with Michael during every shift. She showed him childhood photos, told him stories from the past. One day, Michael said, "I think I know this song." Sarah had hummed a lullaby she used to sing to him as a child. "Do you remember?" "No, but it seems familiar. It's like I heard it in a dream." Little memories slowly began to return. The backyard they played in as children, their mother's apple pie, the bedtime stories Sarah read to him. But his memory after age 16 was still dim. A month later, Michael was discharged. Sarah took him to her apartment. They had come together as a family again, but there were missing pieces. They researched Michael's identity. They got his old files from the NYPD. They re-examined the security cameras from the night he disappeared. That night, after Michael left home, he had wandered around Times Square for a few hours, then disappeared. There was a notable detail in the police reports. At that time, there was a ring in New York that kidnapped children. They were taking children and transporting them to other states. This clue made Sarah think. What if Michael had been kidnapped? What if his memory had been erased? They examined the old marks on Michael's body. There was a small knife mark on his arm, as if from an old fight. One day, Michael said, "Phoenix, this city seems familiar. Have you ever been to Arizona?" "I don't know, but I feel like I know that place." Sarah and David decided to go to Phoenix. Maybe they could find clues about Michael's past there. In Phoenix, they went around hospitals and police stations. They showed Michael's photo from 20 years ago. An old nurse at a hospital said, "I remember this boy. He was brought here 20 years ago. He was seriously injured, had lost his memory. A family adopted him." "Which family?" "The Henderson family. But they moved 10 years ago. I don't know where they went." This clue was hopeful. They tried to find the Henderson family. After long research, they found a family in Denver, Colorado. The elderly couple was surprised when they saw Michael. "Alex, how are you here?" said the elderly woman. "Alex." "Yes, we called you Alex. Because you didn't remember your real name." The elderly couple told the story. 20 years ago, Michael had been found injured in Phoenix. He had no identity, had lost his memory. This elderly couple, who had lost their children, had adopted him. "But why didn't he look for his family?" asked Sarah. "He did not look. He told doctors many times, 'I had a sister, a nurse.' But he didn't give details. There are millions of people in New York. How can we find them? So what did he do in recent years? Construction work. He was a very hardworking boy. He had saved money and decided to return to New York to look for his family. In fact, last month he said, "My sister works in a hospital," and started going around hospitals. The whole story began to become clear. Michael had come to New York to look for his family. Maybe he would have come to the hospital where Sarah worked. But the accident had happened. "Why didn't he come before?" asked David. He was afraid. He said, "What if my family doesn't want me? What if I'm dead to them now?" That's why he was preparing himself. Sarah cried. Her brother had thought about them for 20 years, had dreamed of reuniting with his family. When they returned from Denver, Michael's memory began to open up even more. He remembered the elderly couple, the years in Phoenix, the decision to return to New York. "I always looked for you," said Michael, "but I didn't know how to find you. I only remembered that my sister Sarah was a nurse. There are so many hospitals in New York. Why didn't you go to the police?" "I did, but the files from 20 years ago were closed. I didn't even have a file as a missing person. I guess it wasn't followed up by the family." This was very sad. Due to a system error, the family had been separated for 20 years. Michael had now completely recovered. He started living with Sarah and David. One day, they went to the cemetery. Michael cried for a long time at their mother's grave. "I wish I could see Mom one more time," he said. "She thought about you every day," said Sarah. "She prayed for you to return until her last breath." Michael also continued his communication with the elderly couple who were his spiritual family. They also accepted Sarah and David as family. A year later, Michael started working as a security guard at Sarah's hospital. Now his sister was always by his side. "You know," Sarah said one day, "if I hadn't seen the tattoo on your arm that night, I might never have recognized you." "The tattoo we drew as children changed our lives," said Michael, smiling. SM, Sarah and Michael. Forever siblings. Forever siblings. This story shows us that family bonds do not break over time. Sometimes years pass, paths separate, but love always remains. And sometimes the smallest detail can lead to the greatest miracles. If Sarah hadn't seen the tattoo during a routine check that night, Michael might never have found his family. But destiny brought them together in hospital corridors after 20 years. Being a family is possible not only with blood ties, but also with love. The elderly couple who raised Michael was also his family. But his real family was his siblings who never forgot him. This story is the happy ending version of a drama experienced by thousands of families. Missing children, separated families, lost loved ones. Everyone's story can end differently, but hope should never be lost. After finding Michael, Sarah started volunteering for missing children. Michael also works for the same purpose. Together, they fight for other families to reunite. Because they know one thing: at the end of the darkest night, the sun always rises. And our lost loved ones always live on in our hearts.